Hey, good evening. Hey, this is Pago Jean Paul, realtor at Kelvin's with Two Partners. And tonight, this is bedtime real estate. It's 9 o'clock, and this is how we get down and dirty here in the late night. Tonight, we're going to cover the subject of wholesaling basics. What does that mean to wholesale properties? And like to get that information, I'm on the realtor side. So I decided to reach out to a wholesaler that I know. He is a relative, but he has experience in the game. He does several deals. And I just want to get the kind of like the insight from him on the wholesaling, what the basic of wholesaling. He has a lot of details on it. His name is Michael Jean Paul. I'll let him introduce himself and just put him on.
Hello,
Hey, Michael,
everybody.
man, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Pago, big cousin.
Hey, what's going on,
And
man?
thank you for all of your viewers over here at Bedtime Real Estate for being able to spend this evening with us so we can give you some gems and give you some insight as to what, this real estate thing encompasses.
Yeah, and I'm on I would say the retail side of things in terms of a housing market. So you're in a different field when you talk about wholesaling. Now, but tell me a little about yourself, Michael, so people know who you are.
Absolutely. So just to give you some background, just to give you like the little elevator pitch. So I was born and raised in Stamford, Connecticut, about 45 minutes south of New York City. My mother and father emigrated from Haiti to provide a better future for me and my two older siblings. I got my big cousin over here, Pago, who's
Hey,
filming this. But beyond that, born and raised, low income neighborhood, you know, uh, Section 8, you know, very, very distressed kind of upbringing. However, mom's always been really big in education. So
yeah,
went to high school, graduated high school 2009. From 2009 to 2012, went to community college. From 2012 to 2013, did a year at Syracuse University, and then ended up transferring to UConn in 2013. Attended UConn from 2013 to 2017, studied communications, and while I was there, I had a passion for business. And by the time I graduated, I had offers from, at least 10 of the biggest financial institutions on Wall Street. Um, I ended up working with a financial institution, managing individual, high net worth, super high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals' money and institutional money. Working with the financial institution out here in Columbus, Ohio. Did that for 2 years from 2017 to 2019. And while I was working in corporate America, one of the things I learned, or one of the things that kind of resonated with me, was a quote that I heard. It was most people are dead by 25, and that
yeah,
resonated with me because when I was working in corporate America, I felt like being a person of color, being a dark, being on a team with 37 whites, two Asians, one black, myself for 2 years, and me not being able to recruit more people that look like me, and just dealing in a cutthroat, toxic environment. It was, to sum it up, it was the best, worst experience I'll never go through it again. But I can't like downplay it, so I don't say it in a negative light, because again, working with this institution is kind of what built me and laid down the foundation to who I am today. Um,
yeah.
so, I worked with this institution from 2017 to 2019. Uh, Throughout my time working at the institution, 2018, I read a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yep, that's one of the books that has built millionaires, globally. I ended up joining a real estate investors association. And by the end of 2018, going into 2019, I ended up leaving corporate America cold turkey and taking on an apprenticeship, working with a gentleman, doing wholesaling for 3 weeks. So I did an apprenticeship for 3 weeks, working with a colleague that I met through RIA, Real Estate Investors Association. Um, and after that, I ended up leaving after 3 weeks, starting my own business, and never looked back.
It's kind of crazy, man. Because like to jump out of corporate America, where you kind of have like a guaranteed income, things like that, and doing your own business it's a tough step.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Like, if you're to look at the cash flow quadrant, which is another
Yeah,
book by Robert Kiyosaki, there's four quadrants. If you draw a vertical and horizontal line that intersect in the middle, there's top left, which is employee, bottom left, S for self-employed, top right, B for business owner, bottom right for investor. And when we look at most people and what their temperament is, they're employees. They've been conditioned by society to, look for things like stable income,
Yeah.
consistent yearly increases in wages, and job security. And I was very content, having those benefits, provided to me working with the institution. But as I became disgruntled and wanted more for myself, as I learned more about what real estate can bring, um, I kind of moved to, that bottom left of the cash flow quadrant, the self-employed, now I'm moving towards the business owner side. And the biggest three things why, again, personally, I wasn't really happy in corporate America, but then the other three
Yeah.
reasons why I left was for, number one, financial freedom. I want time
Okay.
freedom. I want financial freedom. I want to be able to, generate as much as I put in without having to worry about any ceilings. The second thing is I want time freedom. So I want to be able to spend time with those, loved ones that I love. And then number three, I want to be able to pursue my passion and interest, unencumbered. And I felt like working in corporate America wouldn't necessarily align with those goals. So I kind of had to transition as well. Um,
All
yeah,
right,
so that
man.
was, a
No,
couple.
that's pretty bold, man. That's pretty bold. Not many
Mhm.
people can make that step from corporate to kind of starting their own business. So I'm happy for you. Because it's it's a transition. You go from getting a check every 2 weeks or possibly every month. Then the next thing you know, you have to go out and grind and get there and find these checks. So
Correct.
the biggest thing people want to hear right about now is that about the wholesaling. Like, what is wholesaling? There's a lot of stuff on social media. There's a lot of stuff what's going on. People find on the web, but kind of what is a basic? What is wholesaling? What does that mean? Because most people understand in terms of putting a product on the MLS and realtor helping you get it sold. They understand that concept. But what is wholesaling in terms of what do you do?
Absolutely. So to your point, there are two or there are a few different, investment avenues when it comes to real estate, several different lines of businesses, whether it's realtor, whether it's wholesale, whether it's fix and flip, buy and hold, syndications, so on and so forth. But when we look at wholesaling, simply put, to summarize it in, let's say, a paragraph, is it's working with distressed sellers and
Yep.
then getting those properties under contract and selling them to an end buyer. Something like an agent. I can't use that term agent
Yeah.
because it's not necessarily representative of what a wholesaler does. We leverage
Yeah.
common law because we assign these purchase agreements. Um, but basically, just again in a nutshell, all a wholesaler does is reaches out to a homeowner, generally one who's in a distressed situation. So, for example, they could be going through probate, they could be going through pre-foreclosure, they could have code violations, but you're reaching out with the seller who has to sell the property. You're structuring a deal, putting a purchase agreement together, then taking that piece of paper, that purchase agreement, and then selling it or middlemaning it to an end buyer for a fee in between, which is called an assignment fee. And
Yep.
That's what wholesalers do.
All right, man. You make it sound so easy. Like,
Yeah.
to do it. So it's, say now, like, let's break it down like all the way to the beginning. Like, say if it's like it's your first day and you decide to become a wholesaler, right? Like
Hmm.
like like what's your first steps? Like, how do you get your leads? Like how do you start? Like how do you start? Like, you already door knocking? Like what strategies are you using to kind of start in the beginning?
Yeah. So I really think it depends on the person and what their background is. So for me, for example, I have a sales background. So for me, my primary marketing channel when I had first started wholesaling was cold calling. But I have
Okay.
another colleague of mine, he was a tech guy. He worked in IT. So when he started wholesaling, his primary marketing channel was SEO or search engine optimization. So he built a website and make sure that it ranked sufficiently very highly on Google. So when people typed
Yeah.
in certain keywords like sell my house Columbus or sell my house Stanford or sell my house Florida, his
Yeah.
website came up and he would get, an inflow of leads from that marketing channel. So here's what I tell people when they want to jump into wholesaling. The first thing I tell them is the more you know, the more you learn, the more you earn. So it's really prudent that you find a good mentor. So Max Maxwell, uh, somebody like a Rafael Vargas, somebody
Mhm.
who can provide you, an overview. But then the second thing I tell people is pick a marketing channel. So there are a lot of different marketing channels. So for example, One marketing channel is cold calling. That's where you pick up the phone and then you cold call people in a certain zip code, metropolitan, an MSA, a certain area, a certain county, a certain city, state, and you basically hammer the phones trying to figure out if homeowners want to sell. Cold calling. So
Yep.
that's one marketing channel. Another marketing channel is SMS, so sending out mass text messages to people. Another marketing channel is sending out ringless voicemails. Whereas you use a different tool like Call Tools or Roar that blasts out voicemails to, different homeowners in the target market. Another marketing channel is SEO, search engine optimization. Another one is SEM. Another one is radio ads.
Yep.
Another one is driving for dollars. Another one is direct mailers. So
Yep.
there's several different marketing channels that you can deploy in order to get yourself in front of sellers. And again, for me, what I tell people is it depends on what your skill set is. So if you have a sales background or you're people oriented, for example, I would say start off doing cold calling. If you got a tech background and you're savvy and building websites, things of that nature, maybe you start off doing SEO and generating
Yep.
inbound leads. Really just comes down to the individual.
Oh, okay. And you decided to do cold calling, so because you had the sales background, you used to now like in terms of this environment right now, in terms of like with scammers and things like that, like how is that affected, like in terms of cold calling, things like that? People like picking up phones and not just getting a ton of voicemails, getting people on the phone.
How do you mean?
There's like, because a lot of times people just send you
Mm-hmm.
a voicemail, and I've done cold calling before and things like that, and like 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 how do you get around that? Like not gonna get around it, but like I guess you have to just call more people.
Oh yeah. So generally speaking, I'll pull a list and there's different because one of the questions is, okay, well, I'll pick my number one, pick the marketing channel. So I'll pick
Okay.
cold calling or SMS. Then step number two is, all right, I figured out how I want to reach out to homeowners. So now how do I actually reach out to them? So there are different websites you can use where you can pull lists of homeowners information depending upon zip code, city, state, county, so on and so forth. So for example, there's one website called ListSource. So you can go to
Yep.
listsource.com, create a login, and then you can put in as a city, state, zip code, county, and you can pull lists of homeowners in that target area. And then you can then upload it into an auto dialer like Mojo Dialer or Call
Yep.
Tools, which will then, triple line dialer at the rate of 250 phone calls an hour, at the push of a button. And then you're able to just run your script or basically, perform your marketing. And, you know, uh, wait, what was your question? Because I see sometimes I
No,
go off
just
on
like because
tangents.
like
Oh, yeah.
I
So
know
that's what I was
people.
saying.
I know people that like dealing with like because right now like there's a lot of scammers out there, like calling from guys nowhere, whatever, calling stuff like that, and some people are reluctant to
Mhm.
pick up the phones now. Like in terms of like overcoming like building that trust over the phone is a lot more difficult now than it has been in the past because I have talked to lenders in the past and they used to do call
Mhm.
calls and it was different like in the early 2000s when people were calling, people more trustworthy. Now people are just like sometimes they pick up and they just hang up the phone like or you like how how's your approach in terms of like getting people to stay on the phones and building that trust over the phone?
Twofold. Number one, I have a script. So I streamlined my entire process. So from the time I get on the phone with a motivated seller or, seemingly motivated seller when I'm doing my cold calling, I have a 7 point check sheet where I ask them the four pillars. So for example, number one, the general description of the property. Number two, the timeline. Number three, why they're selling. And then
Yeah.
number four, how much they want for the property. Those are called the four pillars. But I have a streamlined process, basically a script where I basically from the time I get on the phone with the seller to the time, like it's a completely guided conversation. And I feel
Okay.
like, going in with that kind of thought process adds a level of credibility to you because it's not like I ever call sellers and I'm like
Yeah.
rambling or trying to put something together. From the time I pick up the phone and I get on the phone with the Pago,
Yeah.
or whoever I'm dealing with, there's a I'm asking everything in a sequence and in a way whereas I'm extracting information I need to make my offer in 5 to 7 minutes. So
Okay.
to answer your question, I think it's twofold. Number one, how do you deal? with scammers. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? In today's marketing climate,
Yeah.
I think from the seller standpoint, it comes
Yeah.
to them, using their gut and being able to do their due diligence. So answering the call, asking the right questions, making sure they're saying things like, okay, what company are you calling from? Are you calling from a company? Are you individual?
Yeah.
And then after that, doing the due diligence. Do you have a website? Where are you located? Asking them these
Yeah.
questions so that way they can do their own due diligence. I think that's one way some homeowners can mitigate risk. But then the second thing is, when it comes to the investor side, so not the seller, but now on my side as a person calling the seller, trying to figure out if they want to sell, I think establishing your credibility by way of having a process mapped out in advance is a strong way to do so, and be able to have a seamless, conversation where you can get the information you need and perform, for your client.
Okay, that's really understandable. Like, and when you're identifying the population you're using, like to like, because you mentioned sellers that need to sell. Like, how are you identifying those people? You're making a list, but like, how you identify which populations you're looking for targets in terms of clients?
Yeah, so you can use different websites like ListSource or
Yeah.
PropStream.com, and
Yeah.
I like PropStream. And what happens is when you create your account or use the free trial and you build that PropStream account, you can put in a zip code, city, state, county, so on and so forth. But in addition to that, you can also create filters. So, for example, you can target people who are going through pre-foreclosure. You can
Yeah.
target people who are absentee owners, meaning the owner has a property in a subject market but lives in a different market. You can target people who have high equity. You can target people who have low equity. You can target people who are going through divorce. You can target people who have these different criterias, which you can glean and say, okay, based off of these different factors, they may be in a position where they're more likely to sell than your average Joe. Because that's one of the things. There's two ways you can hyper target your target audience. Number one is you can cast a wide net. So you can look for example, a city or state. You can say, I want to target everybody in Central Florida. And then you can pull a list of 250,000 different homeowners in Central Florida, which is taking the machine gun approach,
Yeah.
which I don't like. But then the other option, so there's two options. Number one is cast a wide net, pull all the data in a specific target market. Or the other option, option two, is hyper target based off of criteria. So, for example, look for people who are upside down, look for people who are
Yeah.
delinquent, look for people who have code violations, people who are going through pre foreclosure, people who have the
Yeah.
water cut off. Because if their water is cut off and there's no water getting into the house, it's likely that they may be in a distressed situation. Look for people who have zombie properties, who are upside down on the mortgage. And again, all of these different criteria, you can go on list source and you can go on PropStream and you can filter. So you can say, for example, Central Florida or Stanford, Connecticut, or wherever your market is, and then you can add these different filters to narrow down that 250,000 broadcasted net to a super slim, refined 10K lead list. And then after you pull that list, now you can call it, text it, so on and so forth.
All right. And then, once you get these sellers on the phone, like, how how do you deter them from like getting a realtor and just selling it? Like, like, especially if someone's like pre-foreclosure, like, in this market right now, where there's short inventory, like, how are you able to get them to choose to wholesale the property, sell it to you instead of like using a realtor, which is
That,
you know what I mean?
that's a great question. So I tell people there are three reasons why you'd want to work with us over a realtor. So number one is because we purchased the house as is. So in some
Mm,
cases, when you work with a realtor, you'll have to put in a certain amount of rehab, whether it's cosmetic, paint, etc. You may have to do what's called bring the house to market, which may
yeah.
require some out-of-pocket costs. So one of the reasons out of three why you want to work with a wholesaler over the realtor, depending on your scenario, is because we can purchase as is. That's number one. Number two, we can close in 7 to 10 days. When you're working with a realtor, on average, it's 30 to 45 days because they have to get you under contract, and then have to schedule and coordinate a professional photographer to take the pictures, 3D
Yeah.
virtual pictures, whatever the case is. Then they have to throw it on the market. And days on market depends on where you're located, but on average, it's 30 to 45 days.
Yeah.
Versus when you're working with the real estate investor, the cash buyer, the wholesaler, we can close in 7 to 10. And then number three, since we're using institutional money, since we're using cash, there are no closing costs, there are no commissions, and there are no fees. When you're working with a realtor, generally they'll charge you 2 to 3%, and that's just the agent you're paying to represent you, your seller agent. Then you'll have to pay your buyer's agent another 2 to 3%, and then you'll have to pay on average 1.5 to 2% in closing costs. And then lastly, you'll pay 3 to 5% in what's called renegotiation fees after the buyer and the buyer's agent walk through your property and pick apart areas to try and get you to come down on price. So, those are three reasons why I typically, explain, why you want to work with the wholesaler, depending on the scenario, versus the realtor. Because again, number one, we buy as is. Number two, no closing costs, no commissions, no fees. And number three, we can close in 7 to 10 days versus 30 to 45.
Okay, I can see. It depends on the situation for a person. I can see why they'll go for that. I still, I'm biased. I still want. If you're
And
looking to
and
sell, you
again,
can sell with me.
and
That's how I
here's
was
the
just joking.
thing.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
here's
Yeah,
the thing. I never take
yeah,
away from the realtor, right? I never
yeah,
take away from the investor because all of it depends upon the objective of the individual seller, right? So if the
yeah,
seller's priority or their goal is to get top dollar, I'm always going to tell them, don't work with me. Go work with a
yeah,
realtor. Because
yeah,
if you want top dollar, your best chance at getting that is listing it with a realtor.
yeah,
But if you want speed and convenience,
yeah.
then you may want to work with me. Okay.
Sure.
So it really depends on what the objective is of the seller. So I never, throw shade towards realtors or say don't work with the realtor. In a
Yeah.
lot of cases, what I find is, in a lot of my calls, I actually end up referring a lot of my clients to realtors because,
I see.
yeah, because again, it's a numbers game. Whether you're a realtor, whether you're a wholesaler, whether you're a fix and flipper, so it's a numbers game. But again, I just go off of the seller's objective. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? If you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, let's get you a realtor. If you want speed and convenience, I'm your guy.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Now that you got the person, and like, how do you get them to? Do you meet them at the dinner table to sign the contract? Do everything online? Like, do you end up seeing the property, or do you last stuff virtual in terms of getting them to sign the contract?
Correct. So I'm a virtual wholesaler.
Yeah.
So I'm located in Columbus, and I can't tell you how many properties I've locked up over the phone that I've never seen, and they're right around the corner from me.
Hmm.
Right. So basically, I have a three-step process. So I'll go ahead and cold call, or I'll do my follow up. Whatever I'm doing to get in contact with the homeowner. But then the second thing is I'll run the four pillars. And then lastly, what I'll do is I'll let them know, as part of my streamlined script, like I have a script that I run through after I identify the four pillars. So the condition of the property, how much they want for the property, how fast they want to sell the property, and why they want to sell.
Yeah.
After I identify those key pieces and we can come to an agreement, I usually ask them, are you in front of a computer or your cell phone? At which point I'll go ahead and then via DocuSign, I'll send
Yeah.
them, a link to the actual purchase agreement. And then I'll stay on the phone and answer any questions they have in regard to the contract or the simple one-page agreement. And as they're going through it, I'm answering any questions. We sign on the spot. And then I have a three-step process. So after they sign, that's step number one. Step number two, I take that purchase agreement, send it to my title company so they can go ahead and do the due diligence or run the background check on the house to make sure there aren't any liens or taxes or encumbrances that are going to cloud the title.
Mm.
And then number three, I'm simultaneously coordinating with my photographers and GC to walk the property and ensure that we had the pictures so that way we could send it out to our end buyers.
Oh, okay. So you just have your GC come take the pictures of the property.
It'll be either a photographer or a GC, correct. And after we get that those pictures, and after we get an idea of the scope of work, what the property actually entails, then we'll put the marketing piece together. And the following week, we'll go ahead and shoot it out to all my buyers, schedule one more round of walkthroughs, and then the following week, we'll go ahead and close the property. It usually only takes me 1 to 2 showings to get a deal done.
Okay. So you don't show on like any like social media platform. It's just like all through your buyers list.
So I do three things. Number one,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and I'll put out the deal on social media platforms. So think
Yeah.
Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace,
Yeah.
um, think OfferUp, think any social media platform you can think of. The second thing we'll go ahead and do is send it out to a buyers list. We'll also leverage tools like Investor Lift, just to make sure we're getting access to a lot of buyers. And then the third thing we'll do is, depending on how that works, and also when we're sending it, to Investor Lift and different things. We're also going on Facebook groups. So we're going on wholesaling
Yeah.
Facebook groups, putting the deal out. And then the third thing we do is, depending on how those first two, and we usually only have to deploy those first two. So send it to our cash buyer list and post it on
Yeah.
social media, and then we'll usually find the right buyer. But in some cases, if it doesn't work within the first 1 to 2 weeks, then we'll do option three, which is we'll pick up the phone and we'll look at sales or market comparables in half a mile, 1 mile radius that sold in 6 to 12 months. And then we'll reverse engineer and basically look at, all right, what cash buyers have bought in this subject area of the subject
Yeah.
property. And we'll call the realtors and say, hey, we've seen that you represented a buyer who bought in this area. Are you guys still buying? And then we'll feed them
I
our
see.
deals. Yeah, but that's the last resort.
That's true. If you can't get someone to purchase the property. Now, like, how do you like certify they can get through with the deal? Like how you verify their not very on the detail about verifying the funds, but like how you ensure that the buyer will be able to close?
Great question. So it's very simple. So we have a screening process. So just like when we cold call sellers and we have a streamlined script that we use,
Yeah.
we do the same thing with buyers. So whether we're marketing on social media, whether we're sending them, if they're on our buyers list, we already vetted them. So if you're on our buyers
Okay.
list, we already know you can perform. But if you're met through social media or if we have to cold call you, a standard protocol. So we'll call you up. We'll figure out, okay, what company do you work with? Kind of what do you do? What's your experience like? Are you working on any projects now? We'll basically canvas them and figure out kind of like what they're doing, what their objectives are. And then, if they claim, if they say they're interested, we'll coordinate a walkthrough. After such time, if they're interested, we'll do two things. Number one, we'll have them provide us with proof of funds or POF. And then the second thing
Yeah.
is, if we get into contract, they have 48 hours to submit an EMD of between $2,500 to $5,000 to our title company to
Uh,
ensure that they have some skin in the game and to mitigate the risks of them wasting our time.
okay. Yeah. I say the EMD is probably the biggest part.
Absolutely, because if you're not going to put down an EMD, you're probably a tire kicker.
Yeah, tire kickers. You get them often.
Uh, with my process, they get weeded out. So like
Pretty
I'll,
easily.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll find a buyer who's a tire kicker and they won't even make it to the walkthrough because
I see.
if they don't have a company or they're an individual, and from what I gleaned from speaking with them, they're not working on any deals. And a lot of the deals, recently have been medium rehabs or guts.
Yeah.
So I'm not even gonna sell it to a novice. So for example, I had a property out in Williamsport, Ohio. So I forget the property address. It was Williamsport, Ohio. We had a buyer who was a FHA 203K buyer.
Yeah.
So they got pre-approved for 100 grand for FHA 203K. For those of
Yeah.
you that don't know what that is, FHA, Federal Housing Administration, they finance and insure um, mortgages to people who are going to purchase a house and do repairs. It's
Yeah.
different than a conventional FHA. A conventional FHA is where a lender will like let you buy a house as a first time home buyer and they'll just fund the purchase price. That's called the FHA conventional. But then there's the FHA 203K where the lender will lend on not only the purchase price, but they'll also lend on you repairing the house. So basically, it gives you the option to be a first time home buyer on a distressed property. So
Yeah.
I had an FHA 203K buyer look at a deal and pretty much. Wait, I forgot where I was going with this because sometimes again I go off on tangents,
No, and
so I
I was
apologize.
pretty much going trying to figure like how do you ensure that the buyer be able to close and you're using that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, we screen them. We make sure
Yeah.
that that they can answer our questions. That they have EMD, that they're
Yeah.
vetted. They've done. Oh yeah, so that's where I was going with the FHA 203K. Here's the thing. So recently, we've been getting a lot of deals under contract that are medium rehab or full gut. And one of the
Yep.
biggest things I do is if I figure out you're a novice investor, for example, this FHA 203K buyer, this was a first time home buyer. They have no experience rehabbing houses. And they wanted to walk a medium rehab, which needed like brand new HVAC, new electric, full cosmetic. So interior paint, baseboard trim, you gut the basement, put in ventilation. Needed a lot of work, but as soon as I identified that this FHA 203K buyer was a novice, I told them this probably isn't the deal for you. So, few things. Number one, I make sure that they have the experience that is commensurate with the deal that I'm providing. Number two,
Yeah.
I make sure you got proof of funds. And number three, I make sure you can put down the EMD. And when I'm questioning you and figuring out, who you're with, who you work for, what your criteria is, I'm making sure all of it aligns. Because again, you could sell a deal and make money, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure it's to the right person who could take advantage of it, because you don't want buyer's remorse anyway. You want to create
Yeah.
win-win scenarios for everyone involved.
So when you put in these properties onto market to your buyers list, are you defining the ARV at the repair value?
Yes.
Or like you're saying like, okay, this property is whatever this amount and expected to at repair value to be this, and like are you like giving all the details like how much profit to make, or they have to do that calculation on their own?
It's always buyers do the due diligence, but on my marketing
Okay.
piece, I do put out sufficient information. So, for
Yeah.
example, I'll put in a street address. I wouldn't put in the number,
Yeah.
So I'll put like, so if it's 123 Main Street, I'll just put Main Street
Yeah.
100 block, or Main Street, and I won't leave the street number because you don't want people to backdoor you and steal your deals. The
Yeah.
second thing I'll do is on the marketing piece, I'll target the audience. So I'll say, attention, my fix and flippers who are trying to do quick flip, or burr,
Yeah.
my buy and hold investors. And then I'll put in certain information like bed, bath, square footage, ARV, rents, lot size, year build on my marketing piece. So investors, and probably one cash comp, so investors have an idea of what the scenario is on this deal.
Okay, that makes sense then. So they kind of get like a quick description of it, and they can decide whether to go in on it
To
on the
ask
deal.
more questions,
Yeah,
to
ask more
schedule
questions.
a
Yeah.
walkthrough, so on and so forth. Yeah, so I'll send them an email, or I'll post it on my marketing channels with a picture, and then it'll have like, all right, buy it now, price, 100 grand, um, quick flip or buy and hold, rents 1250, 3 beds, 1 bath, 1,000 square feet, year build 1920, lot size 7,500 square feet, and it'll have just like, key information on that marketing piece, so that way the buyer is somewhat informed, you know.
So, like for your assignment fee, like do you have to disclose what your assignment fee is? People know, or is this always like, like do people get upset? Like depends like what you get and stuff like that. Like how does it work in terms like in terms of
Mm.
that?
Yeah, I don't think it's relevant to ever bring up an assignment fee, just because
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with the objective of the deal. And that's one of the things I always make sure that the seller knows. What matters not is what I get. What matters is we meet your objective. So if you're trying to sell me your property for a 130, whether I'm going to buy it personally and fix it or flip it, make it HGTV ready, whether I do
Yeah.
number two, buy and hold it, or whether I do number three, sell it to one of my private money partners, realtors, or wholesale it, which doesn't affect the deal at all. The biggest thing is you get your bottom line. And all of it's reflected on the HUD upon closing anyway. So you're going to see what my assignment is. But again, that's not relevant. Um, but if it is something that bothers you, let me know up
Yeah.
front, so that way I can go ahead and double close. But generally, I think I never have to ask that question.
Yep.
I just think when you're speaking to the seller and you put the onus and the focus on making sure that their needs are met, you'll never have that problem. I've been doing wholesaling since 2019. Never a single time I had a deal cancel for how much I was getting paid, nor have I ever had to
Okay.
double close. Um, if the deal required me to double close, I've been doing this for a lot of like since 2019. Never even
Yeah.
had to double close. Um, but I suppose based off the temperament of my seller, if it warranted a double close, then I reach out to one of my friends who do transactional lending, and they'll let me borrow, for 1.1%. So if I need 100 grand to close on a property, they'll give me, 100 grand for 1 point. So, what's 1% of 100,000? 1,000. And then
Yeah.
and you got to cover the closing costs and origination fees, underwriting fees. So you'll pay 3%, but they'll let you, close at that time. So it's under your name, which makes it so that way you can hide your assignment fee, and then you can turn around and in the same token, close with the buyer.
So how do you usually close? So if you're not doing a double close where you're closing one, then getting another, how do you usually work in terms of
Assignment of contract. So I'll do
Mhm.
from point A to B. So let's say, for example, you're going to sell me your house for 100 grand. I'm going to put you
Yep.
under a purchase agreement, which says Pago agrees to sell Value Real Estate LLC. The subject property is going to say the property address, the APN, appraisal's parcel number, and the county. It's going to list the price, the EMD, all the terms and conditions. We're going to go ahead and sign that. I'm going to send it to the title company after they've completed the title search. It takes 3 to 5 business days. And after I do my walkthroughs, pictures, get my end buyer, then I'm going to go ahead and take that purchase agreement. And then I'm going to add on to it what's called an assignment of contract. Whereas after I have my buyer walk the property and say, okay, I'm going to buy the house for 120, I'm going to send him an assignment of contract agreement, which basically assigns my equitable interest in the purchase
Yep.
agreement I established with you to him. All of that gets sent to the title company and they close the deal.
Oh, okay. So the seller
So it's
doesn't even
two
know.
pieces of paper.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
So
two pieces of paper. Yep.
one piece of paper is the purchase agreement with me and you, and the second piece of paper is the assignment of contract, where I'm assigning my agreement with you to my end buyer. Title company gets both, facilitates the closing, and both of you guys will see on the HUD how much I'm getting paid.
Okay. And so, okay, yeah, just wondering how do you do without double closing? So it's like so you don't have to bring your own money in, so they're able to use whatever funds that they have from the buyer to get a close.
In both cases, I'm not bringing any money to the table. So
Yeah.
in scenario one, and this is why a lot of people like wholesaling, because you don't have to bring any cash, any credit, anything to the closing table. All I have to do is get you to sign a purchase agreement. And then what I do is I turn around, add on a assignment of contract agreement, and have the buyer sign that. And now the title company sees two pieces of paper. So Michael has a deal with Pago over
Yeah.
here for 100 grand. So they're going to put that in their title company system. And then they're going to say, okay, well, it looks like Pago is going to sell Mike the house for 100 grand. We're set to close on June 15th. And then I'm going to go ahead and find my end buyer. And then I'm going to have him sign an assignment of contract where I'm going to be selling my equitable interest to buy the house from Pago for 100 grand. And I'm going to sell it to him for 120. So now the title company is going to say, okay, I got an agreement. Pago is going to sell the house to Michael for 100, but then Michael is going to go ahead and sell that same purchase agreement from Pago for 120 to the end buyer, and then they're going to go to the end buyer asking for the wire for 120, and then they get the
Okay.
money, disperse the 100 to Pago, disperse the 20 grand to me. Deal is done.
Okay. So other than on the HUD, then like the seller kind of is not aware of like the other buyer, but you do tell them up front, so like they're
Yeah, I'm
aware that
always
it's there. Yeah.
I'm always transparent in my approach. But if that's scenario one, being upfront, transparent, making sure
Yep.
that, and it's not even necessarily mutual exclusive. It's just in some cases you can be transparent and upfront, but in other cases you may just have to tell the seller that you're going to use your own financing, and then you may have to double close because you may get
Yeah.
the sense from speaking with them that they're a pocket watcher, and they may want to, they may feel some type of way if you're going to make 50 grand off of this property. So in that case, you
Uh,
can't do an assignment of contract, right? Because if you're
yeah.
to do the first stops in an assignment of contract, the seller is going to see on the HUD Pago selling Michael the house for 100, and then Michael's going to assign it to the end buyer for 120. So Pago's going
Yeah.
to see I'm getting 100, Michael gets 20 grand, and then the buyer gets the house. So Michael's the middleman, and he
Yeah.
gets 20,000. So if that's the case, then we have to do what's called the double close. Whereas you
Mhm.
reach out to one of your private lenders or a transactional funder, and then how it'll look like is Pago's selling me the house for 100 grand, and me, Michael, I'm going to close it for 100 grand. I'm the actual end buyer. That's all they see. There's no assignment fee because I'm literally
Mm,
borrowing money from a mortgage company or a lending company that lends in these situations. So you're not going to see anything on the HUD except Michael's buying your house for 100 grand. And then I'm going to close with you. And then 5 seconds to 10 seconds later, I'm going to turn around and sell it to the buyer in that same exact time frame.
okay. So it's
Yeah,
super quick. Oh,
exactly.
well. So like, no, this all sounds great and dandy, but like it's not that easy, right? Like what are some of the challenges that you can face like with wholesaling, especially starting as a beginner as a wholesaler?
I think how I describe wholesaling people is it's
Yeah.
simple. It's not easy. So when I say simple is the process is simple. So understanding how to do it is very simple. You pick a marketing channel, cold call, SMS, RVM, SEO. Number two, you get to work. You put your head down and then you grind it out and then you get some deals under contract. And then number three, you dispose of those deals. So I think it's a very simple process. But what makes it hard is executing on your specific marketing channel and being persistent, being perseverant. You will get cursed out. You will get people who are upset.
Yeah.
Um, and being able to work through problems as they arise. No one deal is ever going to be the same. Every single deal comes with its own set of nuances. So it's being able to work and have the wherewithal and the stamina to be able to work through issues as they arise, as they come up with every deal. And the heavier and the more messy the deal is, the more money that's generally associated with it.
Hmm.
So I
What do you
say it's a
say that?
simple process, but it's hard because you just have to be persistent and you have to be consistent. You know what I'm saying?
What do you say was the most common mistake that most new wholesalers make?
The most common mistake is
Yeah. Really.
most wholesalers don't even make it past like learning anything. Like you'll give the whole game to the future wholesaler and they won't pick up a phone. They won't start the marketing. They won't do an SMS, or they'll pick up the phone and make 5 phone calls. I've seen one person pick up the phone and make one phone call, and then he quit on wholesaling. So I think the biggest thing is they won't even make it, beyond learning. So they'll spend money on mentorship. They'll spend money on creating this cute website. They'll spend money on non-income producing tasks. Not There are two types of tasks in real estate. There's income producing, which is hitting the phones, which is dealing with buyers and sellers, which is going to walk the house, which is doing things in the trenches to get the deal done. And then there's called non-income producing tasks, which is building the website, which is creating an LLC, which is dealing
Yeah.
with the lawyers and the accountant. Nobody cares about any of that until you get a deal. So I don't think anybody has any business, unless you're doing SEO. Don't make a website. Don't build this LLC. Don't do any of this garbage. Go get a deal, and then after you get the money from the deal, you take that and reinvest it in all that non-income producing nonsense. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's the biggest mistake is people will learn and spend money on learning and mentorship, and then they won't execute. And if they do
Mhm.
execute, it's not for 90 days. You have to give this business to generate one deal, you need at least 90 days because you have to nurture the lead from a cold lead to a hot lead. So to close one deal, you need to be consistent, putting in 40 hours a week for 90 days. That's the formula.
Mm, 40 hours a week for 90 days. Not getting many people doing that.
And you don't even, and that's an extreme example. I know people
Yeah.
who do this part time. That's because me, I was doing it full time. I know a guy, one of my good friends, he probably puts 4 to 10 hours in a week. And right now he's at 870K year to date. Last
Oh,
year he did
wow.
1.1 million. So you can put 4 to 10 hours. The biggest thing is just consistency. And I think that's what a lot of investors, novice investors lack. They're not consistent. And that's the X factor. Whether you put in part-time hours, whether you put in full-time hours, none of that matters. What matters is being consistent. And we don't see that from a lot of investors.
That's what pretty much what we hear from our brokers at our brokerages, man.
That's why the
Especially
turnover rate is so high,
yeah.
90%. Go ahead.
No, I was saying like it's very similar to being a realtor, I would say for the most part, like in terms of like consistency wins every time. the more it's not necessarily talent. Sometimes just how consistent you are is will get you there to the, it could get you to the goal with the seller, I would say. Because like with realtor, it's the same thing. If you're not consistent, if you're not out there doing what you need to be doing, and if you're not doing the activities that you can produce profit, is you're not going to be able to last very long.
Absolutely. You make perfect points. You know what I'm saying? And within your realm, you definitely could feel that because, again, what's the turnover? Like 90% in your industry. So most realtors don't make it beyond year one. 90% of
Yep.
realtors will fold after year one, you know? So,
In year 5, most people are gone
yeah,
by year 5. Yeah. Yeah. Now what are, I would say, some like example of like kind of like a horror story that you had for a deal? I don't know if you want to share anything like that.
I got a lot of them. Do you want a funny one? Let's just go through some. So one of
Yeah.
them was a fun deal. So I got this property out in Mechanicsburg, Ohio. And let me give you that one next. Let me go to
Okay.
this one because I like this one first. So I had a client. He gave me a property. He sold it to me in Linden, 43201, and his name was very generic. His name is Michael Smith. I
Yeah.
could say his name because look how generic it is, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody will ever be able to locate this guy, right? His name is Michael Smith. So we signed a contract for one of his properties in 42211, and we did the title search.
Yeah.
Title search take 3 to 5 days to do. And so what had happened was we did the title search and the title search came back. And when we looked at the results of the title search, there was a $250,000 federal terrorist lien on the property.
Oh my God.
And what had happened was the title company had to reach out to an intelligence agency, to meet up with the homeowner and to validate him to ensure he wasn't a federal terrorist. Come to find out, um, Michael Smith, a different subject human, was on uh, like the FBI's most wanted list. He was a federal terrorist, but because the name was
Uh,
so common, it crossed over to my seller. So an intelligence agency had to reach out and literally meet up with my seller and run him through this process. And then he got cleared. That took a couple weeks to a few weeks to get that taken care of.
oh man.
But yeah, so I thought that was a funny story. Well, probably not for the seller,
No,
right?
no,
I think that
yeah.
was funny having to meet up with an intelligence agency who's going to grill the heck out of you, to verify your identity. That was a true story. So that was one. Another story I have was we bought a property out in Mechanicsburg, Ohio, and the owner of this property, he had a deceased wife.
Yep.
Okay, him and his deceased wife were both on the title of the general warranty deed on the property. But one of the things was she had previously owned a store and she had all these licenses and she had all these things. When you open up a business or a store, she had all these fees that were accumulating, but then she
Yeah.
passed away. And when she passed away, all of those debts, because she was on the deed with the surviving spouse, because she was on the deed, all of those expenses, because when she died she didn't get to close her business and close off all of her licensing stuff, so she was still getting charged every month.
Oh
They were just
boy.
adding it to her estate. So when we went to title and they did a title search, ARV, after repair value on this house is probably worth 150.
Yeah.
Owner wanted to give us the house, for pennies, like literally
Yeah.
like 2 grand.
Yep.
ARV 150. We did the title search. There was 100K in expenses from the deceased house because when before she died, she didn't turn off all of her licensing and all that stuff, and all those things, went over to the title. So they put the lien on the house. Yeah, so that crushed that deal.
Oh, did you end up going through, or could you negotiate down at all with those companies, or?
Yeah, so we reached out to the city and then we had to go through a process. And that's the thing. I tell people the messier the deal, the better. Oh, I got another deal. I got another 2 deals, but let me finish this one.
Yeah.
I have mad deals. We had to reach out to the city, and then we had to basically fight with them to explain like the wife is dead, and you have 2 options. like we want to pay you like $400, or like basically we want to pay you pennies, and we want you to
Yeah.
release the lien for 100 grand. There's 100 grand lien. If you don't release the lien, we're just not going to close on the house, and you're just going to have a nuisance that is going to cost you money, because you're going to have to then forward it to building and zoning, and then you're going to have to demo it. To demo it is going to cost taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
So you may as well just waive the 100K and work with us. And so I was going through those proper channels, but in doing so, I also had other deals come up. So I ended up not moving forward with that deal.
You let it go.
Yeah, I let that deal go, which in retrospect, I kind of regret, not because of the money, but because I, now, like knowing what I know now, I was a newbie at that time. So when I was going through the channels, it was a lot of stress. But for me now, I'd be able to body that. Like it wouldn't be nothing for me to talk to the city. And now with the knowledge that I have now, I could talk to the city way differently than how I was when I was a newbie. So I would have
Yeah.
been able to get the damn deal done. I wasn't getting the deal done because I was going through the channels and I didn't know what to say. I was nervous. The people from the city called me up trying to negotiate with me. I didn't know how to spin the narrative in a way where it makes sense for them. So,
Yeah.
I kind of fumbled on it, and I didn't get to deliver to my client, and I let the deal go.
Then
You
end
know,
up.
so
Did
that,
you find out? Did you ever end up finding out where they sold that property or not?
what happened with it?
Did they end up selling that property? Did you end up find out if they ever sold it?
No, I never followed up with that
They
property
didn't follow
again.
up with that one. Oh, okay.
I was scaling at that point.
Yeah.
I had 7 people under me, and we were getting in tons of deals across my desk. We're getting tons of
Okay.
deals. So at that point, I let it go. It's just another number. Um, one of my favorite deals ever, though. One of my favorite deals ever was Steel Ave, Columbus, Ohio 43204. I had a seller who had a professional tenant in the property. So for those of you who don't know what a professional tenant is, it's a tenant who doesn't pay their bills, but they understand zoning and violations, and they basically understand how to not pay rent and legally um, deter you from being able to evict them, because they'll get code violations involved. They'll get lawyers involved. They'll do things to basically make it difficult for you to evict them. So
Yeah.
I was dealing with the seller who had a tenant in there who hadn't been paying rent for 1 year. So when I dealt with the seller and I called them up, it took probably 6 to 9 different attempts, over 6 months. But eventually, I learned he was so motivated to sell the property that he would even come to the closing table with 5 grand. And so how we structured the deal was I took the property over. I couldn't make him a cash wholesale offer because at the time, the note on the property was 58 grand. After repair value was 100 grand. I could only offer him 50 grand. What's the problem with that?
Mm.
If there's a mortgage on the house for 60 grand
Yeah.
and the ARV was 100 and I can only offer him 50,
Yeah.
he owes 60, I'm offering 50. What's the problem with that if we
He's
tried to close?
short.
He's short 10 grand.
He's short 10 grand. Yeah.
So basically, I couldn't make him a cash offer. So what I had to do was I had to do what's called subject to, which is I had to take over his note of 58 grand, which meant monthly payments of $310. And then
Okay.
I turned around and then I did a wrap. So he basically gave me the house for free, subject to the note, and then he paid me 5,000 at closing to take the house from him.
Yeah.
So he paid me 5 grand and gave me the house, and then I turned around and did a wrap. So I put 4 grand, updated the HVAC, put in a new thermostat, did a cleaning of the house, did some minor fixes, and then I turned around and then I sold it on a rent to own. So I was on the hook for 310 a month, 58K note, and then I turned around and then I sold it 8K down, 800 a month, and at the end of 2 years, 80 80,000. So I made 5K when I got the house for free. And
Yeah.
then when I turned around and did the wrap, I made another 8K. And then I had monthly payments of 310, but I was generating 800 a month for 24 months. So I made a spread of about 300 a month for 24 months. And then at the end of year 2, I made 20 grand on the back end. So I got paid on the front end, 8K down, $300 a month for net for 24 months, and then 20K on the back end. Sub two.
Oh, wow.
That was one of my favorite deals.
Man, yeah, he made it sound like so simple, but he's able to save that deal because being $10,000 short, like usually people just move on to the next one.
And that's the biggest thing, right? So that's what I love about real estate. Don't get too hooked on the money. Focus on solving problems, because
Yep.
ultimately there's money involved in every problem, right? So, but ultimately what it came down to was he had an issue. He needed to get rid of the house and he couldn't even sell it, because if he put it on the MLS, he would have to pay 10,000 at closing. If he tried to cash sell it, he's upside down. He literally could not sell this property because his loan was worth more than the value of the house. So
Yeah.
the only solution there was for me to do subject to, which is to take it over contingent upon its existing finance. And so I was able to provide a win-win-win for everybody, because I provided a win for the seller because
Yeah.
he was a tired landlord. So I was able to alleviate his stress and his pain points. I was able to provide value to the tenant buyer because I gave them a good deal, 80K over 2 years. And then I was able to provide value to myself because I generated, a profit in creating a lucrative solution for both the seller and the buyer. So that's all real estate is about: creating win-win-win scenarios for everybody involved.
No, I totally agree, man. And that's what we do as realtors too, man. People have problems, and you have to find them a solution, and you have to, sometimes it takes some skill, experience, and smarts to figure out how to make it work for both sides. Because you don't want to end a deal with one side being better or one side being upset that one side wins. Yeah, they want to. Everyone's it should be balanced in the end of it, so that people can go with the deal and walk away, not cursing you at the end.
And while and to add to that, one of the biggest things I tell people is after you get into real estate, like you read your books, you read your ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Kenneth McElroy, you
Yeah,
read your Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, you read George Anton, The Wealthy Code, you read The Debt Millionaire. After you get the knowledge, the second thing, number one is get the knowledge. Number two is and this is the most important part, is you have to acquire a mentor. If life were
Mhm.
a video game, your mentor is at the highest level. He's a level 100. He's exactly where you want to be. He has everything you want. He's right there. You need a mentor so that way he can tell you how to avoid the different pitfalls that are lurking behind the corners. He could also give you insight up front. And if the relationship is strong enough, he can even throw you lines, or she, and pull you up to where they are. So if
Yeah.
life were a video game, you need a mentor who can power level you and help you grow significantly faster because of their knowledge. You see what I'm saying? Because when I was dealing with all of those different deals, those creative finance, seller finance type situations, I banked 90% off of it. I literally had to call my mentors and say, this is a situation. What do I do? And I remember one of my mentors literally sat on the phone with 30 minutes and he said the same thing to me like 6 times. He's like, you're going to do A, B, and C. And then I was like, I don't, can you help me understand? And then he was like, all right, take out your laptop. Are you in front of your computer? And then he was
Yeah.
like, all right, pick up the phone, call the seller, write down what I'm going to say. You ready? This is a real story for that house that I just told you about where
Yeah.
I did the rap.
Yeah.
My mentor had to tell me, take out your computer. I'm going to tell you exactly what to say. And then I started typing out everything he said. And then I called up the seller, looked at my computer, and read off, because the seller had some objectives and I didn't know how to answer them. So I
Yeah.
literally just read off of the screen. And then the seller was like, oh, yeah, that actually makes sense. We can do that. I wouldn't have gotten some of these deals done without relying on my mentors. You know what I'm saying?
Mm. Make good sense, man. And as a realtor too, I have my coach too, so we're going through things, and so how to be. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought too. As realtors, the same thing.
That happens to me
Real-
all the time.
Realtors, the same thing. Like coaching is important. It's just like going to the gym. Like having that person that can be an instructor sometimes, even if it's just like in a group, or like, being like in a yoga class or something like that, having someone as a group or something like that, being there to guide you what you need to do is important, because it makes these positions easier to get to and stuff like that. And then,
Yep.
so it shortens the time to be able to be successful. No, I know some of you guys like pop in, pop out of this podcast, and you guys watch this later. But pretty much, Michael started from the very beginning all the way to the end in terms of like how to be like a wholesaler, especially for beginning wise. Talking about first identifying like what type of channel you're going to use, whether you're going to call people, whether you're going to send out mailers, whether you're going to send out voicemails to people, things like that, text messages. There's a lot of different avenues, but you have to pick one. You have to focus on that one there. Then getting people on the phone, talking to them, trying to get them on the contract. He uses electronic signing with DocuSign, getting people in. And what he does is stay on the phone with the person, kind of explains the whole contract. Cause like, you want people to completely understand what they're signing, so that they don't go back and say that you mistreated them or any type of way, or didn't explain what they actually were signing. And being upfront, communication is important. So he makes sure that the person knows what they get into as a seller, whether he'll have a couple strategies until they're not selling that property, whether he'll buy himself, whether he have his own buyers sell it, or he refer out to a realtor to get that sold for that person. And then from there, like, how to close, you have a couple different options to close. Yeah, you can close, in a way that, you have one contract with the seller, then you have another contract with the buyer. Then your title company takes care of closing the property, closing one, then closing another. Then you go actually do a close where, where as a wholesaler, you actually get a loan or traditional loan to cover the property, then sell it to someone else, and that way too. And the biggest thing is he's talked about throughout this podcast is don't have a mentor along the way. You can't do it all by yourself, and especially in the beginning, to knows how to do things the right way, because you don't want people to, litigation, stuff like that. You have to make sure you follow the rules in terms of like in real estate, because there are a lot of different agencies that, protect people and stuff like that. You don't want anybody come to your house and serving you.
Right.
So, Michael, I really appreciate your time, man. You got some great stories in terms of like some of the good and bad deals that you've done. And, you brought a lot of insight on wholesaling. I'm a realtor, and just get people, because I, work with the different investors. It's great to share information like what wholesaling is, like, because people really generally don't know what it's about for the most part. They just know the name, what it is about. Like they might see a video on Instagram or whatever, or a video on YouTube or something like that, but they don't know the ins and out. And this is a great like introduction to what wholesaling is, and like how to get to the point of becoming, getting your first contract, and like what it takes to do it. And I really appreciate your time coming on, man. And people will definitely take some value out of this, what you said tonight.
I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate you for having me. Yeah. If your viewers watch this thoroughly, they'll see that tons and tons and tons of gems have been dropped. They can literally just watch this one podcast if they pay attention to it thoroughly, and they can start the real estate wholesaling career just off this one video, just off this one, if they're really that about it. Because again, we listed the process. Number one, I'm just going to break it down in 3 steps for all the viewers one more time, just like how you did.
Yeah.
Number one, pick a marketing channel, whether it's cold calling, and if you're cold calling, use Mojo Dialer or Call Tools or Zen Call, or you can do SMS. That's another marketing channel. So you can send mass text to people. So you can look at tools like Roar or REI Reply, or you can do SEO, search engine optimization, create a website through Carrot, and then drive traffic there. So step number one is pick a marketing channel, or you can do radio ads, you can do television ads, you can do billboards, you can look up ringless voicemail. You can do a lot of different ways to market, but number one is pick a marketing channel. Number two, execute on the marketing channel. So if you're going to do cold call or SMS or whatever you're going to do, actually create a schedule and put in the time and the sweat equity to generate the results. And then number three, be consistent. Find a mentor. If you don't know where to start, look up REIA, so Real Estate Investors Association. You can Google that and you'll find the closest REIA to you. Find somebody you have a personal connection with and a professional mental connection with within the space, within the niche you're interested in, whether it's wholesaling, fix and flip, buy and hold, commercial, whatever. And those are the 3 tools you need to start your real estate career, whether it's wholesaling, anything.
All right. Thanks, Michael, man. We appreciate it, man. So I hope you have a good night, man. Maybe we can have you on again. I would like that.
Absolutely. And if your viewers want to find me, they can also look me up on Instagram, Mike Ross. And actually, let me double check what my Instagram is because I don't even know
Yeah.
what it is. Quite frankly, I don't use it often. M Ross PJ is my Instagram. So M is a Michael, Ross, ROSS, PJ. If anybody's interested in learning more about wholesaling, wants to reach out. Otherwise, Pago, again, thanks for your time, and feel free to reach out whenever.
All right, man. Have a good night. See ya.
All right, talk soon. Bye.